Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of Day 4 with Frank Scalish. It is show number 101. What are you laughing about? I can't hear you. I've got you muted.
Oh.
What a bad start to that one. Can I start that over? Good morning and welcome. What's going on, Frank? Show 101. We made it through. We kind of made it through show 100. We made it through show 100. You made it back up to the frozen.
Tundra.
What do they call? I thought that was Green Bay.
Well, whatever it is, it's frozen.
That's
yeah. It was kind of a drag. I mean, driving home after that because I didn't get my enough of my fishing fix in down there. I got a lot of it in.
We fished 3 days. I'm glad we went the first day, the Wednesday when you got in.
Oh, dude,
that gave us like an additional half day to fish.
And it gave us hope. Hope is good. But yeah, and so when I got back, everything was frozen. I was actually going to dump the boat in, the tin can in, do a little winter fishing, but much to my dismay, we're locked in.
You see him on the phone. You know what I'm doing? Guess what I'm doing at 9:45 today?
I don't know what you're going crappie fishing. You're such an idiot.
All right. If you didn't see it, you could go to my Instagram. I put a bunch of stuff up of the crappie fishing adventures that we had. Frank, you have the list of winners from show 100 that will be mailed. Now just flash it up there. Don't show. There you go. And those winners, those prizes are going to go out
after the show
today. So if you should have one color number 7 spook, which is what we'll get into next.
Yes.
And then you should have 4 day 4 maps that you're going to sign and send out to the winners, and then an autographed hat.
Correct.
So
which I'm actually giving him 2 autographed hats.
Oh, fantastic. All right, let's get into this because we got a great show today.
Todd,
the prop guy, Todd Bucknow, is back today, and we actually have videos. What are we talking about today with Todd?
We're talking about performance bass boats. So what we're talking about, we're not going to dive too deep into rough water handling. We're going to dive into how to properly set your boat up for maximum efficiency and handling, which is really a key. That's a key thing to the more efficient your boat is and the better it handles, the easier they are to drive and the less complications you have driving them in the long run. So we're going to cover that. Todd's going to go over what different blade shapes do to boats. We're going to cover a whole lot of things today in this world.
Awesome. So we'll have Todd on for the first half of the show, and then let's say you're a bank guy or a canoe fisherman or kayak fisherman. We'll take a couple questions at the end then.
Correct.
If you're not, but I mean, these are some pretty cool videos. Like one of them is titled 118 mile an hour Allison. We'll just leave it at that till we get into it.
We're going to leave it at that.
All right.
We got to address something.
Yeah. So color number 7 went live at 11 a.m. last week after the 100 show.
Yeah.
Take it from there, Frank.
And by 11:04, they were gone. What had happened was the orders were coming in so fast, the system wasn't calculated. Every time you make an order, it comes off of an inventory sheet. So then it always knows how much inventory is in there. It happened so rapidly that the inventory count didn't keep up with the order count, and it overlapped. So they're having color number 7 is coming back. It'll be back in 90 days for those who want it and didn't get it. The initial run on color 7 was actually short. So they're going to have plenty come up in 90 days, and then you guys will all be able to get them. So, they apologize for that, but there's nothing, I don't personally make them, so there's nothing we can really do except wait another, 3 months, and then they'll be good.
Right. And I've had emails, DMs about it. And if you're listening, I wanted to wait until Thursday because there's some people that are getting calls, some people that are getting
Right.
emails, but like you said, the system is so backlogged with so many people. It's not that they're not going to get to you eventually. It's just it takes forever to do that much. But as a whole, the day 4 listener, like I said, we joked about breaking the system beforehand. We didn't know.
Right. We didn't realize it was going to happen.
If it would take half the day, if it would take 3 days. I mean, I assumed that we would sell out just because I know that there's more than 300. And here's the cool thing: no one bought 100 of them. That's not the thing at all. We were kind of worried about that because it's hard to put parameters on with their website too. But 99% of people were very
considerate.
In
fact, speaking of considerateness, I have to say this too. This audience is fantastic because I got a lot of DMs with guys that had purchased 4 and were willing to give 3 back.
Yeah.
For the people that don't have them. This is a very non-selfish audience. You guys never stop impressing me every time we do something. So kudos to you guys. Nobody has to give anything back. Nobody does. There are going to be plenty of them.
And they will be in. And like I said, apologies on our end. LureNet has a very good problem, I guess, on their hands, but they do realize that they had the problem. So thanks for hanging in there. Now, I do want to say that you have arrived, Frank.
I've arrived. I've arrived in Cleveland.
Listen, I don't know what to think about this. I don't, but it is kind of cool. I don't know what to think about. Is it capitalism? Is it whatever? Because right now there is a color number 7 spook on eBay for $77.77. There it is right there. $77.77.
And we were also joking about when they would be on eBay.
And they're on eBay.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
I mean, if you really, really, really want it before April,
right,
or the beginning of May, then have at it. I know that there's a big push in the glide bait market of guys who flip stuff, but it's freaking America, man. I mean, I thought it was nice that LureNet and we all did. I mean, it was a straight up a paint shop deal. We didn't add any. It wasn't $10, $12, $15, nothing. It was the straight up what you get for your paint shop prices, which I thought was really classy too.
Right, because they could have easily jacked it up, but they didn't. There's no. You know what? That's not what LureNet's about. It's just a place to get baits and cool baits. So, I mean, they played it straight to the wire, and then we had a small issue with the orders, and now it's going to be resolved, and it'll be resolved by April. So I think that's pretty good.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else we got before we bring in Todd and we get to 118 mile an hour bass boats and fast passes and Allisons and props and all sorts of stuff? Or are we ready to rock this thing?
No, I'd say we just get to, hey, let's light it up.
What's up, Todd?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good. 2 shows in a row. You jumped on for show number 100, talked about that cool new 5-blader you were working on, and then Frank wanted to come back with a deep dive this week and get some videos up and do a bunch of stuff. So thanks for 2 Thursdays in a row joining.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having
me. And here's part of the reason why this materialized today was after the 100th episode, I got a lot of DMs. Guys wanted to know about proper bass boat setup and performance. So I thought, well, since it's winter time and we might as well cover stuff that we're probably not going to cover very in depth during fishing season. I said, well, let me call Todd. Let's have at it.
It's your show, guys. I don't know anything about this. I just know that my props on. I just recently learned how to take my prop off. So have at it.
Well, Todd, where do you want to start? I mean, do you want to start with do you want to start with what different blades do, or do you want to start with the big question that I get all the time is motor height?
Well, let's start with motor height. because I think that'll be a good topic to cover. All depends on how much nose weight you have, the balance of the boat, and how the boat wants to lift. Certain boats want bow lift, certain boats want tail lift. So motor height is going to be critical to get you the best handling and the best attitude of the boat the way it's supposed to ride.
All right.
So go ahead.
Go ahead. So, okay, I'll let you finish because you're probably going to get there.
No, go.
So, okay, so when people talk motor height, we have to clarify because I realize that there's a lot of people that don't know what that really means. I mean, yeah, you can raise your jack plate, lower your jack plate, but what are you looking for in motor height?
All right, what we're looking for in motor height is center line of the prop shaft or the lower unit in reference to where that sits below the bottom of the boat, your pad. Most of the bass boats have a pad. So the dimension is from the center line of the gear case to the bottom of the boat. And that's the height when we start talking about motor height. Most guys have a jack plate and they're able to run it up and down, and they run it up, they run it here, they run it there. That's not really, you can find out kind of where your sweet spot's at, but it's really nice to know exactly where you're at. So then when you're trying different propellers, trying different balances of the boat, you know where your starting point is, and you can come up a little bit from there or down a little bit from there. Now, when you go up in motor height, you have the tendency for the boat to lose a little bit of bow lift, which will drop the nose. Now, for the boats that like to run level and flat like your Legend, Frank, you can get away with a little bit more motor height. For somebody that's got a heavier rig, more nose weight, you can run the motor deeper and get the leverage to pry the bow up if the boat wants bow lift. So obtaining or knowing where your motor height is at to carry the style boat that you have with the weight that you carry is of utmost importance to get the correct performance out of that hull.
Todd, let me ask you this. You got guys that are on here going, well, we're talking about high performance. This is applicable on whether you have a 50 horse, a 150 horse, a new motor, a 4-stroke, a 21-foot bass boat. There's an optimal setting for every vessel, regardless of age, length, weight, height, and build, right?
Absolutely. So whether we're talking a 50 horse on a 15-foot aluminum bass tracker, or we're talking about a 60 to 70 mile an hour bass boat or an 80 to 100 mile an hour bass boat, it's still going to be critical to get the best performance out of the boat.
Okay.
Right, because here gas mileage improves, handling improves. This is all about handling. If you have a boat that's not set up properly, it handles differently. It's harder to drive. You experience weird stuff, chine walking or whatever.
What are some of the weird things? Maybe guys have a boat that is not set up right, but what are some of the signs that maybe your boat is not set up right? That they're going, hey, that happens to my boat, and I just assumed that was the boat.
Frank touched on one already, chine walking, which is where the boat is going to dip left and right instead of staying on a straight track. And if the boat is doing this, you're 9 times out of 10 guys are going to get out of the throttle and they're not going to be able to, run it at that speed. The other thing that you can get is what we call porpoising, where the nose of the boat goes up and down like this, and it just doesn't want to stay up and sit there and take the ride. So those are the two most common things that we see. And I hear all the time, guys, just got this XYZ boat from the dealer. He said he got 72 out of it, but I can only drive it at 66. Well, if you got a 72 mile an hour boat, he should be able to run 72 mile an hour in it. His setup's wrong. So either the motor's too deep and he's getting prop torque reaction, which is too much bite, which would be similar to having too much bite on a tire in a car, that the car is just not going to act the right way when it leaves the light because you're getting too much grip. So if you have too much prop and lower unit in the water, the boat will want to list to the left usually because the prop is turning right, which will force you over to the left. So it's a balancing act between the height, the style of the propeller, and just knowing what the boat wants as far as bow lift or tail lift.
All right. So there is a chance when you see some guy out there who comes off pad, he's going, or he's getting up, or you see a boat that it's not that he just sucks at driving it. It could be that his boat is not set up properly.
Absolutely. See it all the time, man. See it all the time. Now, there's no replacement for seat time in your own boat.
Right.
That's number one. But we see it all the time where it comes from, a reputable dealer, and that's not getting on any dealer's case, but they ship the boat out. But each individual is going to load this boat up 400 pounds differently.
Right.
So you have to deal with what your individual rig is and find out what it wants. And there's a number of ways to get to that. And we can touch on it, but each blade style is going to do something different to the boat to help it in a positive manner.
You have props in front of you. You could show different blades.
I do. So this would be similar to what the Mercury Bravo prop would be. And this is, we put a lot on bigger V6 bass boats. Now this has got kind of more of a rounded blade to it. Okay. And with that being said, that will tend to lift the bow a little bit more. And without getting in too crazy into physics, the angle of the blade to where it's mounted on the tube, the higher it is mounted on the tube, that's a higher rake angle that creates more bow lift. If the blade is mounted to the tube and it's down lower, that's less rake angle that will lift the tail more. So in a situation like that, you have a different style blade. This is what we call a semi-cleaver style blade. This will give you more neutral lift or tend to lift the tail more.
Which is what I run on mine.
Correct. So this is two different, style blades that could go on the same boat that will have two completely different reactions to the boat based on what it wants and needs.
And how do you know which one you need? Like what's your boat doing if you want the cleaver style, and what's your boat doing if you need the rounded style?
Okay, so the roundier with the higher rake angle, if you need more bow lift and the boat's just not freeing up from the water, the roundier style with the high rake angle is going to be the prop to go with. Okay,
because it's going to get the nose up and the boat out and allow it to hook up and go.
That is correct. So if you have a boat with natural bow lift that doesn't need to help lifting the bow, then you can move on to a semi-cleaver style that helps to lift the middle and the back end of the boat. So the boat is clean, but it's off the water level instead of just being bow high.
Okay.
Right. My boat loves to run level, but I have to get the boat out of the water. So we went with that semi-cleaver style because it lifts the boat up like that.
Correct.
Horizontally. So I have air underneath my hull, but the boat's running like that. It's not running like that. It runs like that. And I load mine heavy. So you told me something one time for how much weight is in front of the console. So for every 20, if you put every 20 pounds in front of your console, what does that do?
Well, we're talking about downforce. So if we look at a regular 20-foot bass boat, okay, if we have 200 pounds in the nose, that's 200 pounds times 20 feet. So you're looking at, 400 some pounds of down pressure, okay, on the nose of the boat, because it is 20 foot from where the motor is doing the lifting with the lower unit and the propeller. So even a 100-pound trolling motor may not seem like a lot, but 20 foot in front of the point of push. Another example, you got in trouble when you were in school. The teacher said, put your arm out, hold your dictionary. No big deal if your arm is 3 feet, but if your arm was 20 feet long, that same 3-foot dictionary would feel a lot heavier.
That's what I was going to say. It's like you have a, let's say you can lift a 10-pound weight very easily and it's right here and you're lifting it. But now if you put a 10-foot pole and you have that one arm and you say, lift that 10-pound weight, you're going to go, it's going to be really hard to get it off the ground and the weight's going to barely come off the ground. So that's the exact same. Yep, and you're talking jig boxes, rain gear, your spare prop, clothes, plastics.
3 12-inch graphs.
Yep.
I got you.
You know what I mean? And the trolling motors today are way heavier than the trolling motors.
Which would also explain why a lot of guys with all of the big graphs have so many problems with eating waves, because it's harder for them to get the nose of their bow up because they've literally got 60 pounds on their bow of their boat, as opposed to a guy with just a 9-inch graph that has way less weight at the very tip.
Absolutely. Correct. And the other thing that we've seen too, Matt, in the advent of all the lithium batteries, great product. And with all the electronics and everything that the guys are using, I see why they go to them. But when you take that weight out of the back of the boat now, compared to the lead acid batteries, guys are actually losing performance on some boats because now they can't get the same bow lift because don't have the right amount of weight that the boat was designed to have in the back. And now the back comes up higher, which drops the nose. So they're, it's a balancing act to get the boat to do what it's supposed to do.
Hey, the best description you ever said was it's like a teeter-totter.
Yep.
Okay, so if this is your pad from here to here is where you're supposed. So you're asking that prop to lift all of that up. If you're in a teeter-totter and your weight's in the middle, it's real easy to lift the front of the boat up. But you go back here and you're going to put all the weight back here to try and lift all of this bass boat. That's what you're asking your prop to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, okay, so now, so we're talking about running level, bow up, bow down. Let's talk about when a prop blows out and you're getting slippage. What's slippage?
That's my big deal. So like I was out on Ontario, I had a 3-blade prop. I was in 5-footers. It was fine, but man, I'm climbing it and then it goes like that. Like I'm just not getting the power to get over it. And I'm like, God, this thing's coming from behind me. That's what we're talking about right now, right?
Yeah. Now rough water's a little bit different, because you're just dealing with such a mountain of water and the boat coming up and down and then the bow dropping and the rear end of the boat kicking up. But when we talk about slip percentage, as far as performance goes, First thing is out of the hole. Okay. How much excess cavitation is too much? What is not enough? What I always tell my customers, Matt, and tell the guys that I'm working with, it's okay to have the prop spool up a little bit and slip as long as that bow is going forward and it's a 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 boom and you're on plane. A little bit of slip is good. If the prop locks up too hard, it'll just bog and it's going to be very slow to get up on plane. Now, when we look at slipping, as far as when we're running, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour or wide open, we use a quick formula. We take the pitch of the prop, the gear ratio, and the RPM of the motor. You come up with a theoretical speed, okay? What your real speed is, you divide that into that theoretical speed, that'll give you a percentage. Most bass boats in this category of 65 to 75 miles an hour are going to be right around 8 to 10% slip percentage, somewhere in that ballpark. So if I'm talking with a customer, I run the numbers real quick. Hey, Todd, I'm doing 67 at 6,000 RPM, a 1.75 on my Mercury 4-stroke. I can work that out and say, hey, look, this is what you should be in. And then we take a look at those numbers, and now we can decide which prop is going to help that slip percentage to help him get better bite, which is going to improve everything from the handling, the whole shot, and the top end. I know that sounds like a lot, Matt, but it's a formula that gets you in the ballpark to see what the boat is doing versus what it's not doing.
Yeah, and the thing that amazed me about slippage, a couple of percent makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a monumental difference. The slippage that you were talking about, Matt, with the 3-blade, them 5-footers,
totally different scenario.
Correct.
Because you have,
I got you. Sorry,
you're trying to push all the weight of that boat up that mountain of water. The water's pushing you back. You're trying to climb the boat. The problem with the 3-blade is it needs RPMs to spool up.
I got you.
And so it's not getting them, and it's slipping in the water, trying to push that weight up, which is why that 5-blade handles so good in that kind of situation, because you never lose forward movement.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, on Frank's boat, when we were doing the testing on Frank's boat, and these are minimal amounts, but we made a run. We looked at the numbers, punched it in real quick, and I told Frank, I said, look, we need more cup in this particular version of this prop, because if we can get the slip down to, X number, we're going to be exactly where we need to be. And he just kind of looks at me and he chuckles. He's like, you and your numbers, And it literally, Matt, it was 20 thousandths of cup being put into the blade that made the difference of another 3 to 4 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And everything that we wanted the boat to do as far as lift, handling, everything else, it just needed a little bit more for what he was carrying and what his boat wanted. So when you look at that slip percentage, you can learn so much about what's not happening that you want to happen, that we need to get through the propeller.
And is there any way to do this formula on your own, or do you need to be in the boat Mercury, with someone?
Yeah, no. Mercury has a prop slip calculator. You can go right on their website. A lot of people use it more on the performance end than the regular run-of-the-mill end, but it is a number that will help you, zero in to what is exactly happening at speed or at wide open throttle. Yeah,
and something that I'd like to say too is that when I set my boats up, my magic number is 71 to 73 miles an hour, because I'm not setting my boat up to be a rocket. I'm setting my boat up to handle waves, rough water, and I want to be able to corner and turn extremely well and smooth. And so I don't look to go to the high end of my boat's capabilities speed wise. I have my idea of the perfect boat is I want handling first and foremost, rough water capabilities, and that gives me a boat that's easy to drive. I don't have to fight through any nonsense. It's easy to drive. It's very responsive. My gas mileage is good. Everything about it is good. So I have this little window, and my window is little, and Todd could attest to that, because we do so much extensive garbage when I'm setting one of my boats up, because I'm not trying to get the best of one thing like speed or the best rough water. I want to be in the middle, and I have to be exactly in the middle.
Basically,
So,
you're not trying to set it up like your drag race. Like
right.
You don't want to take a drag race to a NASCAR track.
Right. Exactly. So, and well, I mean, you're talking about drag racing. Pop a video up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
we have video.
Pop that video. I think it says Todd, Tony, and Paul, and we can talk about trim angle here.
Sounds like a 70s band.
All right, let's see how this works. Let's go with this, and then let's add this to the. Oh, beautiful! Look at that. Look how nice that is.
See that?
All right. No audio on this, but what are we looking at here, guys?
All right, what we're going to look at is when the boat first starts to accelerate, you'll see the rooster tail go up, but then as the prop hooks up, the tail will drop. But when the boat comes by, you'll see the boat off of the water, but the trim angle of the motor is going to be neutral. If you're too trimmed out and you're wasting that thrust up towards the surface of the water, you're wasting forward push.
Oh, that was it right there. So that's where the
tail's up.
So that means
you're accelerating.
Okay.
You're accelerating.
And
as the boat starts to lift, now the tail will drop. The boat's out of the water, but we can stop it right when we can see the motor angle. Now, if you look at the top of the motor, it's level. So the boat is lifting, okay, but we're at a neutral trim angle. Now, granted, bass boats are going to be a little bit heavier than that scenario right there. But the bottom line is you want as close to possible as neutral trim that you can have with your prop doing the correct lifting to get the forward thrust of the motor. The guys, Matt, that are running around the lake with a trim angle and they're shooting a rooster tail up.
Yeah, what about those guys? You see them, you're like, man, you can't follow them within 50 yards because you just get a shower. I mean,
it's a fire hose.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So what are they? Are they just...
Okay, so when we talk about slipping at wide open throttle, okay, there's an example. The motor is trimmed out too far. The prop is not getting efficient push. And instead of the propeller screwing on a horizontal plane underneath the water, okay, what's happening is that all that thrust of water is going up towards the surface and spraying it up with what they call a rooster tail. That is the most inefficient way to push a boat forward. So if you've got a high rooster tail, chances are the setup is way off.
Correct. That's the best way to tell too, is that rooster tail should be about cowling height.
Yeah. From about the top of the motor cowl down below is right where you want that rooster tail, as we can see here from this video.
Right there, and that's the level. That's the shot right there, isn't it?
That's it. Perfect stop.
Like if
I guess I didn't realize there's like nothing in the water back there, guys. Like, I mean, that's the lower unit right there. I mean,
that's it. Now, when we talk about boats like this, Matt, all these pad bottom bass boats are designed after the 70s and 80s of Allisons and Bullets, and that pad bottom design is no different on any other boat, really. A couple changes here and there, but we're still dealing with the pad bottom boat. So even though we're looking at a boat that's not a true bass fishing boat, the principles are the same because the bottom of the boats are so similar.
Right. And if you're using, 3/4 trim to full trim to get your nose up, you're way off base.
Yeah.
Way off base.
Now, granted, in some heavy loaded bass boats, you're going to have to use some positive trim. There's no question about it.
Positive trim means
trimming out,
angle up. Trimming
up.
Okay.
Okay. So that will tend to lift the bow more.
Yeah.
But if you have to use too much to the point where you're wasting the thrust, then the prop's not hooking up and you're not going forward. And that's where we get into the setup as far as style of blade. What can help you lift that nose up without using the engine trim to tilt it up, and motor height to what is the best motor height to carry what you want to carry as far as your boat, your weight.
Okay. Dumb question here real quick.
Shoot.
So, I've ran 3 different models of Bass Cats over the last 5 or 6 years, and I've never, and they all, run a little different. I'm sure that's because of the hull that Rick designs different hulls on all of them, but there's also, each boat also gets out of the hole differently. And I've had some that just pop out and go, and others where it was like, and then boom, it would go. But it was like, so the one that I just had, great top end speed, incredible handling, a lot. I don't want to use the word squirrely because it's different, but it was like, you could take your hands off at 75. The one I had before that, you had to start driving it at 73 or 74.
Yep.
But it came out of the hole a lot easier than this one. That's all just setup stuff that I did not have dialed in, right? Or is each one a little bit different if they're the same kind of models?
If it was the same exact model, it was definitely a difference in the setup.
Okay. Because I felt like it was a setup deal, because when that boat would perform 100%, and when I took it to the Merc guy, because I got grass in my deal, he was like, "Hey, everything," and he like did the spark plugs and changed it. It was just like, boom, it popped right back up again.
Now, another example too is, Matt, is that you went to a different style motor. So if you went from the same exact boat with a 250 two-stroke.
No, it's the same motor. I've had that same motor, for 3 different models. Okay, gotcha. But so the more I talk to you here, I realize it was just small tweaks in setup that could have been, absolutely, instead of the boat individually being a little different, because they all handled phenomenally, but they all got out of the hole a little different. You all ran it. I had to run each one a little different. You get used to it to where it feels like you're sitting on your couch while you're going 74 miles an hour. You feel every little tweak. You know exactly what's going. You know when you need to bump it. You know when you need to pop the trim up a little, bury the jack plate, depending on the chop.
Right. And that's a great question too, Matt, because from this standpoint, we get a lot of phone calls. Hey, I've got the same bass boat as, Bob. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here you go. You had the 2 same boats. Your boat and Bob's boat are not going to be the same. You don't have them loaded the same. It could be a difference in setback, a different jack plate, an 8-inch to a 10-inch. There's so many things that go in. So really nobody has the same boat, as you just attested to.
Yeah. And I've run Alpha 211s. I've had, 10 or 11 of them, and every one of them's different.
Yep.
Every one. There was something about everyone that was a little bit different. And so, that's why we take the time to, drive them, look at them, see what's going on, because,
So important question here. Let's say there's a listener who's going, yeah, what's happening to my boat is exactly what Todd and Frank are describing. I get the deal. To start, are you going to focus on the weight distribution within the boat and the boat compartments before you start messing with the prop and the motor height and all that to make, like, how do you know what your correct weight distribution is in the back, and whether it's you're loading the boat wrong or whether you need to tweak the prop or the engine height? Is that a fair question?
That's a very fair question, Matt. And that's where that slip formula that we run comes in. Okay. So when he calls up, I'm doing X amount of mile an hour at this RPM. Here's my motor. I know the gear ratio. Once you work that out to find out how the boat is running as far as the slip percentage, then just by knowing certain boats, which ones have bow lift issues, which ones need tail lift, then we start talking about what prop, what motor height to help that scenario that he's in get better, by giving him something that's going to push the boat better or lift the boat better.
Right. So so like a lot of times people will call, they'll go, man, I'm tacking 6,000 RPMs and I'm only running 67. Okay. Or they'll say, what can I do? And I'll say, all right, well, what RPMs were you running at full throttle? Well, I don't know. Well, you have to know what your RPMs are at top end. to get to do this calculation because you're working backwards. You get the best numbers the boat's giving you at the time, RPM, speed, and then you work backwards from there. Let's say we're going down the lower unit to the prop. That's how you do it. So if your numbers are inaccurate, then everything else is inaccurate.
Right? Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. We still have a couple other videos. Do we want to get to that? We have one that says 118-mile Allison.
Yeah, we take a peek at that.
I've been a little curious about that one.
So go ahead, Todd.
All right. So this is actually my father, and
not
that's
him.
Sorry, that was a poor editing job on my part.
That's a buddy of mine from Canada sitting in the back taking a video. But as you start rolling this, Matt, we'll get to a point where the camera goes to the back of the boat, and then we can get a good look at a flat rooster tail and how the water's just peeling off the back of the boat, not the sides. So less wetted surface, better performance. You're freed up from the water.
Okay. We'll just let it run because this is just a cool shot.
No problem.
You've got a Allison for those of you on iTunes. That is now the camera's starting to get the speed shakes. Oh my gosh!
Hey,
oh my gosh!
I'll just tell you that.
Okay, here we go. Nope.
It'll start to come around.
108. Here we go.
Okay, so here we go. We can take a look at that.
I need to pause that right there.
Okay, so there's the motor angle. So we're pretty much at neutral trim, which means we're not trimmed in and we're not trimmed out. But as you can see from that tail, it's lower than the motor cowl, and that water is just going straight back. Okay, now whether that's 118 or 68 miles an hour, you still want that water peeling off the back of the boat going straight, because if it's coming off the sides, we have too much wetted surface and we're wasting performance.
And fuel.
Correct. And handling.
Because of friction. Because you're pushing more, pushing
more wetted surface.
More wetted surface, which is creating more friction, which is taking more energy to propel the boat forward.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
I'm going to cut that clip out and save it because I'm proud of myself.
You did a great job there. But there yeah, I mean, you know, these are go fast boats here.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to experience that in Todd's boat. And I'll just tell you that 118, 120.
That is a happy guy right there.
He is an interesting individual.
Yeah, he's a happy guy. Well, whenever your boat's set up right, you're a happy guy.
No question. No question.
Can I ask another dumb question?
Absolutely. There's no dumb questions.
Trust me, you haven't watched all the BTLs there.
Exactly.
Okay, let's say I have a basic understanding of this, Todd. Mm-hmm. But let's say I'm also me and I know my limitations and abilities. Like, are there people or you like, is there like, hey, for $500, I can bring my boat on a good day and I'll have a guy jump in and diagnose it for me and say, here's what I think we need to do. Like, is that like part of your job to like, you jump in with Frank and get his boat dialed in? Is that something that obviously we're talking to you that you could do to where it's like, hey, for this, and then I can diagnose, I could say, I could get in and be like, dude, it's set up freaking perfect. Or I could get in and be like, dude, you need the lift, this friction, goggles, blah, 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 whatever you need to go.
Yeah, we do it. And I probably do, I'm going to say 15 or 20 of those, Matt, throughout
What is that called? Like a diagnostic?
It's just setup.
A setup run.
Yep,
okay.
Yep. They come in. Guys from Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, closer to my area will come in that are having issues, and we'll go out to the lake and I'll bring a bunch of props and we'll adjust motor height, get the right wheel on there. And by the time that they leave, they're set up, they're good. And
so you know what prop you need to buy instead of buying a prop that then isn't ideal. So you have all these test props with the different shapes, sizes, cups, pitches, and you're like, this is the ideal one. And then you can say, hey, let's set one up for the rough water. And you can go there and have your rough water prop, your ideal prop, your speed prop, and it's all dialed in.
Absolutely. And, for a guy that's going to spend a couple $100 to do that with me, By the time you try to purchase 3 or 4 or 5 different props that didn't work, maybe they're returnable, maybe they're not. You got shipping back and forth. So for guys that, want to come in, it's just easier to get it done and make sure it's right before they leave.
Yeah, and it's really a great experience because you learn so much about your machine. I've never learned so much. With the boat that I bought, this last boat that I bought when I got it, we had the boat was set up so improperly. When I got behind the wheel of it the first time and ran it, I'm like, whoa, this handle's not at all like any Legend I've ever been in. There's a problem. And I didn't understand exactly where the problem was. So I ran over to Todd's and we looked at it. And the first thing we did, they had some funky thing on the bottom of a static jack plate. And the first thing we did was we removed that. It did, I want to say, a little better, but it really still didn't do what it was supposed to do. And so the whole key was we did one change at a time.
Okay.
And we gradually worked our way through this thing.
It's the same thing. Like if your body is unhealthy, you're not just going to start taking all sorts of different medications because then you don't know which one is the one that's helping the ailment or what it is. You're going to start systematically saying, well, I mean, until you get down to it and you're like, clearly the liver.
Right? We always start there, right?
Yeah.
It's so true though, Matt. When we make changes, if you changed height, propeller, and weight bias, one way or the other, you don't know what worked or what didn't work for the next test. Okay. Now, one of the things that we have the unique ability to do, since we've been driving these things and racing them all of our lives, is one run in the seat. You can tell exactly what the boat's not doing.
You can feel it.
Yes. So obviously there's an advantage if you can get in the seat and feel it yourself if you're with the customer. But with the experience that we had doing this for 35, 40 years, over the phone, we can diagnose 99% of anything that they have.
All right, couple questions that I want to get out of the way. Jay's Outdoors says, so we just call and make an appointment?
Absolutely.
I would assume that is the Hydromotive Engineering in Twinsburg, Ohio.
That is correct.
It's a prop shop. Another valid question. Someone wants to know, do you just go to Nate would like to know if I'm going to not in that area, do I just go to a prop shop for setup help or go to a mechanic for setup help?
I would say that have them, call first and we can, kind of speak to what direction he has to go. And if he needs to go that route, he could. But a lot of these guys can take care of pretty much just by over the phone with us.
Oh, without having to go to
correct.
Chris with an interesting question that I actually had earlier and then the moment passed. Is the prop pitch and the prop cup the same thing? No.
Okay, so let's talk about pitch for a second, and we can do this real quick. Everybody throws pitch numbers around all the time, but not a lot of people understand what it is. If you have a 25-inch propeller pitch, that means every time that prop rotates 360 degrees, you're supposed to go forward 25 inches.
It's just like reels. 7-1 gear ratio, spool spinning 7.1 times every time you do 360 degrees. I had no clue about that. This is mind-blowing, Todd.
Okay, so all right. So with that being said, Matt, if we're only getting 20 inches out of that 25, there's our slip. There's our drag. Okay. So no prop is 100% efficient. So that's where you have to take in that slip percentage. Now, when we get to cup, okay, the least amount of cup that you can have in a propeller to obtain the lift characteristics that the boat wants is the best. The more cup that you put in, you are robbing horsepower. So, for example, Matt, your motor, your 250XS makes its peak power right around 6,000. Okay. If I just put a ton of cup in your propeller, it would now turn 55 or 5,600. So, yeah, the propeller is biting more, but I just took you out of your power range.
I got you.
So there's a balance there. You're going to need some cup. There's no question about it. But a lot of people just throw that in there liberally. Where like the example, like we were talking with Frank, it took 20 thousandths to make a 3 mile an hour difference.
Which
and
is
the ride
nothing.
attitude
Yeah.
was way better. So a little bit goes a long way. So pitch is not the same as cup.
Okay. Let me put this in layman's terms for me again too. So if I'm in big water and I need power, can you consider the pitch number almost like a low gear on a bike to where I'm going to want to run a 24 pitch And that's why a 27 pitch 3-blade does not perform as well, because I need the power to get up a bit, and it's spinning fast. So it's like trying to go up a hill on a bicycle in a high gear.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, Matt, that's like leaving in a stick shift car going uphill in 4th gear.
Yeah, well, you're out of my league in a stick shift too. I tried. Listen, I learned how to drive a stick shift in my buddy's Jeep, and I could drive it on flat ground, but we had to do the old switcheroo when we had a red light at the hill.
So we were talking about the 5-blade last week for the rough water series. That prop there, Matt, is a 21 pitch. Because
that's really, really, really low.
So that is that is a first gear, because you're never going to over rev it, because in that kind of water, again, you're not going to be going 50, 60 miles an hour at 3, 4, 5 footers. So you need that instant first gear sprocket to climb up that water and get down it.
Now I'm actually seeing why guys carry 2, 3, 4 props with them. Absolutely. And why you literally see them based on conditions in the parking lot changing props before they dump their boat. And I always thought like, oh, this guy just wants everyone to know that he thinks he knows what's going on. But it's like a tool. It's just like you wouldn't try to drop shot
or a Phillips.
Exactly.
You need 2 screwdrivers.
I understand that. And that makes it super understandable for me.
Good.
We have one more video.
All right.
T Buck and his Allison XR 2002.
Yes, this is the one that actually I took Frank in a ride in, and Frank drove it for a little bit. He did good. He did real good.
Is this the one that you've never actually been able to talk about, Frank? It's like the secret run where you're like, I can't tell you how fast we actually went.
I don't even know how fast we went. My tunnel vision.
What are we watching for here?
Okay, we're looking at boat attitude again, how the boat frees up off the water, and trim angle. And again, just another good picture of getting the boat off the water and the tail dropping.
Wow.
Let me just tell you how that boat is just ridiculous.
So everything there is ideal.
Correct. Now, if we take a look at the motor, Matt, again, we're at a neutral trim angle.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Rooster
nice
tail.
stop.
Oh, yeah, that's really nice stop. Rooster tail below the top of the motor cowl, but the boat is off the water. Now, granted, this is a go fast boat. That's a lighter boat, but the same thing can be achieved in an 1,800-pound bass boat in 60 to 75 mile an hour range. So it's not a lost art just to go fast, guys. It's the way that the boat should ride.
All right, so let's do this. So if something was improper here, let me see if I've learned anything from this show.
Okay.
You would see the rooster tail here would be above the cowling of the motor.
Correct. And shooting up towards the sky.
That's and shooting up towards the sky. You would see the angle would not be directly behind the boat. It would be shooting either out to the side, or it would be one of those weird pitch angles coming out, which would mean that you have more boat in the water than there needs to be, which you're not getting the performance.
Yep.
You would also see the attitude of the boat would be different, and you would have a lot more boat riding in the water.
Absolutely.
And this guy would be freaking the hell out because he'd be chine walking at 100 miles an hour.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
that's a bad place to chine walk.
Frank did a great job driving, but the first time I told him to get into the pedal a little bit, I saw his big toe and he just stomped on it a little bit, and he I think his heart skipped a beat for a second.
So the best way to drive out of a chine walk, though, is not to let off. It's to trim, and it's to turn the wheel into it, right?
Correct.
Okay. And very slow and deliberate. You don't want to, nothing crazy fast. It's
in most cases. Yeah. In most cases, guys, a lot of people tend to overdo the counter steering, way too much. I want to
see that again.
Everything is from like 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, Matt.
Okay. Hey, go ahead.
It's very little movement on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Like I'll just do that, just a little shake.
Let me ask you this, Todd and Frank. Is your ability to make like hairpin turns at speed, is that based on the boat and the hull? So like on the Cat, I can just go, but there's a lot of other boats you can't. Is that based on the boat, hull or is that based on the setup? So like, let's say you're going in a freaking river and you're going, like how much you're sliding, how responsive that is that setup or is that the hull?
If we're talking about making 1-pin turns, I wouldn't suggest anybody do that in a bass boat, to be honest with you, because that'll get you in trouble.
Well, I'm not talking about whipping it around like Grand Theft Auto.
Right. If we're talking about snake turns on a river, whatever, then we're talking about setup for sure.
Okay, that's key. That's key because there's some boats where you see them. I mean, you can tell they're freaking sliding.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're probably too high out of the water, too much trim, and it's like the sharper your turn is. What I do is I tap the trim down a little bit and accelerate into the turn. That's the sharper the turn.
Doug asks, what do you mean turn into it? This is back to feeling the boat during the chine walk. Try to do your best to explain what you mean by turning into the chine walk. So you're basically instead of going with it to make it more, you can get into the groove where when the boat wants to go this way because of the prop and the way it's turning, you can counteract it, which is going to level it, right?
Correct. So if the boat wants to tilt to the right a little bit, you're just going to jog the wheel to the left a little bit.
It's like tuning a crankbait.
Exactly.
So it's that fine balance of when the boat wants to go left, you're a little bit right on the wheel. The boat wants to dip right, you're a little bit left on the wheel.
You can feel it. You can feel it hit it, and you're like, "Ooh, I did it right." Because that was the thing that took me the longest to understand, to feel it in my butt and my body, to where
Yep.
And dude, it just becomes second nature.
It does. It does.
And this is when you are really high performance, trimmed out, like you have 4 fish in the box and you got 30 minutes left and you're
right.
It's just like the only time I ever drive that is in calm conditions, and I know I'm screwed if I don't put another one in the boat, because there's no sense in driving it. There's no sense in pushing the limits when you don't have to. Like, you don't drive your car 120 miles to the gas or to the grocery store.
Yep, I agree 100%.
And the thing is too with you just totally took my train of thought out when you said grocery store. Go ahead.
Why? Well, you don't call it that? What do you call it? The market?
No. Oh, I know what I was going to say. You're not traveling a great enough distance to shave that kind of time off. When you're talking about, 4 to 5 miles an hour, you're not traveling that many miles where you're going to save yourself 3 to 5 minutes. You're only going to save a minute at the most.
I'm glad you touched on that, Frank, because myself personally, Matt, I love acceleration more than I love top speed. It's always fun to go fast, right? But in a 65 to 75 mile an hour bass boat, I would rather run less pitch closer to the rev limiter of the motor and have that hole shot and acceleration than have a prop that's slower out of the hole, slower mid-range. It maybe runs a mile an hour faster, maybe 2, because on a shotgun start, just throttle response, if you left, 2 guys left, one with a 25 pitch, one with a 27, the guy with the 27, if he had 2 miles an hour on him, it would take him 10 miles down the river before he even saw the guy with the 25 pitch.
So I was running a 27 pitch on my boat this past year, and I probably needed to be running a 26 or a 25.
What RPM was it at wide open throttle?
I want to say 6,100.
Well, if you're at 6,100, then that's okay with the load that you're carrying now.
Okay.
Now that's based upon what the numbers, say versus how you're slipping. Because remember, if the prop's not really hooking up good, you can turn 6,100 RPM, but that RPM didn't equate to speed. Your tires are on ice. You're getting RPM, but you're not going forward.
Multiple people, and Frank, sorry, we're not going to have a second part to the show. We're just keeping Todd on for a couple more questions, and then we'll keep Todd on. We'll bring him out. This has been very informative. So I wasn't around for the first prop show. Is this different stuff than you guys covered last year?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. A little bit more in depth.
A lot of questions on the instant feedback about the motor distance from the boat. You see guys that have the motor set back. I don't even know where you want to go with that. I don't understand.
No, it's a great question. So when we talk about jack plates, again, the further the motor is back, getting back to our leverage point, okay, the more ability you have to carry the bow. So the further that motor sets back, the more ability you have to raise the bow. But there comes a point where if you get too far back, you're going to lose efficiency just because it's not going to be good out of the hole. It's going to be lazy on acceleration. So I would say most jack plates for the kind of boats that we're talking about are going to be somewhere in the 6 to 10 inch range with a hydraulic plate or a static plate.
Okay.
Now, there is certain instances, like on Frank's old Legend, it was a little bit heavier in the nose. We had to put a set of 2-inch spacers, so we took it from 8-inch to 10-inch. And I remember Frank going, oh, man, the guys at the factory said that, it runs better with an 8-inch. We put 2-inch spacers on that, and those 2 inches gave us handling a couple mile an hour, and the boat reacted completely different, just setting the motor back 2 inches.
Yeah, it was crazy how it was crazy how much better it was.
Yep.
So that's the other thing. I prefer hydraulic jack plates. It makes things easier. But there's nothing wrong with the static plate either, because you set it and forget it.
Now, if somebody calls me up, man, just to give you a real life example and says, hey, I can't get my bow up, I'm breaking water off by where I sit in the boat and I just can't get the nose up to save my life. 2 things we're talking about. Bow lifting propeller. And then number 2, does he have enough setback to carry the weight he has in the nose? So he might be a candidate to move the motor back further to get the boat out of the water more.
It's good stuff, guys. That's
pretty
really
cool.
good stuff. I understand. I understand a lot more about it. This turned into, like, I did a battery show last week, and I finally, like I said, I'm basic, man, but I'm not afraid to admit it. There's stuff I should know that I don't know. But once you freaking know it, then it makes sense. Like, I understand parallel now, and I understand where everything's going, and I understand, depending on if I have a power issue, what battery that's connected to, and how I can fix that issue, and how I can check it. And now I feel like I have a better understanding of the prop deal.
Good deal.
Yeah, it's really cool. Todd and I have been working together, well, since before I started fishing Bassmasters.
Yep.
And it's just always a learning thing for me too. But it never ceases to amaze me how sometimes the most minimal thing makes the most monumental difference. The other thing is that when you're setting something up, what I've seen by doing this is that you hit a wall. If things are incorrect and they're not going well, you hit a wall where no matter what prop you put on, you're getting exactly the same results out of it.
That means you're maximizing. You're doing it. You've got
what that means is there's a bigger problem somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. For example, Matt, if you try 3 or 4 different style wheels, bow lifting, tail lifting, and everything is running the exact same, we call that hitting the brick wall, because now the props that should make a difference, either good or bad, are doing all the same. Right. Now we have to look further into the setup because all those props should run completely different. And usually that's a motor height or a setback issue at that time.
That's freaking good stuff. Like I said, we could go through questions. We could do this for hour upon hour upon hour. But for those who would like to continue the conversation with an intent of potentially doing something, Todd, what do you want to give out yours? We did it last time. Hopefully you weren't like over inundated with things. I know, like, when I did it with some other, they're like, holy cow, but that's good. So more information, specific questions, anything you want to do, email address, do you want to do contact form? What's the best way?
Contact phone number, 330-425-4266. And they can get me directly. And I'm here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Hold on. I'm going to do this.
Here we
go. I'm
go.
Gonna make a banner.
We're getting a banner.
All right.
It's going to be a beautiful thing.
Todd Bucknell. Name of the shop is
Hydromotive Engineering.
HYDROMOTIVE.
That is correct.
ING or ENGINEERING.
That is correct.
And my dad was a mechanical engineer, so I better know how to spell engineer.
Oh yeah, he'll smack you.
Yeah. And the number again was what?
330-425-4266.
Watch this. Boom, we got a banner.
Boom, we got a banner.
right,
So while you were doing the banner, I drew motor height.
Oh, Frank.
There you go.
So that's your motor height.
That is it.
Anyhow, see, there's multiple things going on all at one time.
And
So how does that not? So you're saying the prop is out of the water while it's spinning?
a lot of the boats that we deal with, Matt, the guys are running 1.5 inches above the bottom of the boat.
Is that
Not
potentially
really.
part of the reason why you're seeing some props that are not getting their full lifespan out of it, because you're putting a lot of extra
Yes.
torque on it by coming
Yep.
out of the water and then going back
Absolutely.
in, and it takes those little hairline nicks and stuff, and then boom, you rip a ear off.
It very, very possible. But when we go to running that kind of motor height, prop blade style is going to be key. That's when we get more into the cleaver style. Something.
Yep. Yeah.
Where'd it go?
There we go. So this is meant to run at the surface or above the surface. But I will say this, just for general, prop 101, anybody that's out there, no matter what motor height that they're running, if you've got a bunch of nicks on the leading edges, as long as they're not too deep where it needs a full repair, definitely take a piece of like 400 wet sandpaper and try to get those little nicks out, because the example I always use to Frank is if you take a hanger and if you make one little score mark with a hacksaw blade and bend it back and forth, it's going to break right at that score line. So each one of those nicks is a stress riser, and that blade is like a hummingbird wing in the water going
And
around.
it's just vibrating. So if you can get that nick out, it's not like that the whole blade is compromised, but it's the leading edge. It's like the hangnail where you're going like this over your nail, but if you have a hangnail, you're going to rip it.
Right on. Right on. So
are we ready?
Keeping those leading edges clean is important.
You got anything else? Or are we ready to hit the exit music?
I think we're good.
This was the easiest show for me ever.
This is why I love like Scalish. I just wind it up and let it go. You got a little taste of what it's like to be me, Frank.
Sweet.
Todd, much appreciated. Fantastic
Guys, I enjoyed
job. Good stuff. Like I said, if you have questions about color number 7, Frank addressed that in the first segment of the show. There will be more down the road. Are we going to get back to bass catching next week, Frank?
Yeah, I want to do a deep dive on football jigging.
Oh, I'm all in on that. Looking forward to it. 102 deep dive on football. Todd Bucknell up in Ohio. Frank Scalish. Boat setup, props, pitch, cup, attitude, rooster tails. We covered it all. Weight distribution. It's good stuff today.
I have an attitude.
Well,
yeah, well, that's another show, man.
It's okay to have an attitude because you're also a genius. Geniuses can have attitudes. All right, this has been another edition of BTL Day 4 with Frank Scalish. Bonus guest Todd Bucknell. We will see everybody on Monday. Later.